If you're in the market for a new MacBook right now, I'm here to help you. And the good news is that this decision has become much easier over the past couple of years. So the quick version is that Apple now offers M4 chips in both the MacBook Air and MacBook Pro, which means whatever you pick, you get the newest generation of processors that's currently available. And for most people, actually, I would recommend the MacBook Air, even if previously you might have gotten a MacBook Pro. The MacBook Air is a great machine, great display, it's really portable, it has great battery life, and it's more than fast enough for all office and productivity work, and also will be more than fast enough for all of that in the coming years. In fact, even if you do some more intensive tasks like programming, design work, video editing, photo editing, and so on, if you don't make money with that and you're not a working professional in those industries, I would still say the MacBook Air will be enough, because if time isn't money for you, then you might have to wait sometimes a little bit longer for some stuff to finish, but in the end it will always be capable of doing most of the things you want to do. There's actually just a few reasons why I would recommend going up to the MacBook Pro. First up, if you just want the nicest MacBook out there right now with the nicest display, the nicest speakers and so on, and you don't care about the extra cost, then go for the MacBook Pro. Number two, if you absolutely need an HDMI port or SD card slot and you don't want to use an adapter at all, then you also have to go for the MacBook Pro. Number three, if you already have an M series Mac like an M1, M2 or M3 MacBook Air and it's constantly slowing you down in heavy tasks, you also need to go for the MacBook Pro because it has higher end chip options. And number four, if you're a working professional and having a faster computer will absolutely save you money by saving you time, then you also can go for the MacBook Pro because it will be a smarter business decision. Just keep in mind that if you are in one of those four groups, you will still have to deal with some of the extra weight and less nice portability of the MacBook Pro because it's quite a bit thicker. But still, it should be worth it if you're in one of those four groups. For everyone else, I would absolutely recommend the M4 MacBook Air because it's a great computer and is really, really fast. If you want more detail on the comparison between the MacBook Air and MacBook Pro and also the configurations that I would recommend, then keep watching. Just a quick note before I continue, I will focus only on Macs that are available as new from Apple, so that's like the M4 generation of the MacBook Pro and MacBook Air, but it's of course a great idea to also look at the M2 and M3 generation because they're sometimes still available. If you can get them at a discount from a retailer or even refurbished from Apple or used if you're comfortable with that, they can be a much better choice because you can save some money or get a better configuration. As a general rule of thumb, I would suggest that you go for the M3 version if you can get it at like at least 20% off compared to the M4 version. And you go for the M2 version if you can get it at like 40 to 50% off, because then it will really be like a significant saving. Alright, so let's talk about the options in more detail and let's get started with the M4 MacBook Air, because as I said in the intro, this is what I would really recommend to most people right now. It's a great laptop because it kind of matches a really thin and portable design with really great performance, and it's just like a really good all-rounder. The design hasn't really changed since the M2 generation, but I think it's fine because it still looks really modern, it's really thin and looks very much like a baby version of the MacBook Pro. It's also available in a new color now, which I think is nice. It's like a slightly bluish silver, it's called Sky Blue. It's kind of weird because now Apple offers this laptop in like a blue silver, silver, slightly gold silver and also almost black, so it's not the most creative color palette maybe, but they're all really nice looking colors, and I think that also kind of ensures that you won't get sick of them because they're very muted. It also has great battery life, which you wouldn't really expect maybe from a laptop that is this thin, but still like it should almost every time last you a full day if you don't do like video editing all day. It also has a really nice display, and the display I think in general it's kind of like the weak point of this laptop because it's not as nice as the MacBook Pro, but I would say it's still very much good enough. It's an LCD panel, which means that like the whole screen lights up behind the color panel, and that means that the blacks won't be as deep as on your iPhone if you have like a modern iPhone from the past like 5 years. But apart from that, it's really good. It's bright enough, it has great colors, and it's great for like all around use. It's more than sharp enough. It also has a really good webcam, and the webcam is actually something that was improved in the M4 generation because it now supports center stage, which means that if you move around the room, then it will just follow you, or if you like move your head like this and this, the camera will kind of follow you, or if you're in a group with people, then it will kind of make the frame so that it fits all of the people, which is a nice added bonus. It also has enough ports for most use cases. It has 2 USB-C ports and also a MagSafe port for charging, and I think for most people that should be fine. You can adapt the USB-C ports, of course, into almost anything like a SD card or HDMI and so on. You just need like the right adapter, but still like 2 ports, I think it's fine. It would be nicer if they were like one on each side so you can charge it from both sides, but that's unfortunately not the case. But still, I think, yeah, it should be enough for most use cases. And if it's not enough for you, you should know by now. The keyboard and trackpad are also really nice, as you've probably come to expect from Apple laptops, but there was also a brief period from like 2016 to 2019 where it wasn't the case, but now they're like good again, so it's a really good keyboard, really nice trackpad, and it also has a really nice big Touch ID button which works flawlessly and is very reliable and fast. Actually, to me the MacBook Air is like the best laptop for typing right now because it's much thinner than the MacBook Pro in terms of the bottom portion, and so it's more comfortable. It's not as raised up off of the table as the MacBook Pro. It also has really decent speakers for a laptop that's this thin, especially on the 15-inch version, and in terms of power it's much better than you might expect from a MacBook Air. It definitely has more than enough power for all office tasks, and it's even powerful enough for some more intensive tasks like coding or creative work like video or photo editing. It really only struggles if you need to do very intensive tasks for a long time, since it has no fan, so it gets slower if you push it for an extended period. But if you don't definitely know that it won't be powerful enough for you, it most likely is fast enough. For the configuration, luckily it starts now finally with 16GB of RAM, which is great. From there, I would think first about how much storage you will need, because you should be able to see that based on how much you're using on your Mac currently. I would always get some headroom in terms of storage just to make sure that you don't run into any issues, and it's also not upgradable later. But with any budget you have left after that, I would just upgrade the RAM to 24GB. It's not necessary, but it's nice to have. In general, the base configuration is already pretty nice if you can live with 256GB of storage. And if you want to go beyond that, I think the 24GB of RAM and 512GB of storage is a really nice sweet spot. I wouldn't really go that much beyond that because it pushes the price too much into like MacBook Pro territory. But if you can go from the base model to the 24/512 version, that would be like a really nice future-proof laptop. It's also available in 13 and 15 inches, so you have to decide on the right size for you. And I would say the decision is kind of the same as between the 14-inch MacBook Pro and the 16-inch MacBook Pro. And I've actually made a separate video about that if you want to check that out. But the short version would be that if you'd never use an external display at all, this might be a reason to go for the 15-inch because it's much nicer for multitasking and some like more space-heavy programs like Final Cut Pro and so on. For everyone else, I would recommend the 13-inch version though, because it's much nicer in terms of the form factor. It feels a lot smaller. And also if you mostly work with text, I think the smaller version is actually more than enough, even if you don't have an external monitor. So to recap, I would say the MacBook Air is the right choice for almost everyone, and I would recommend it to pretty much everyone that asks me for a laptop recommendation, because I think it has like really nice performance. It can do some more intensive tasks still, and it has a lot of headroom for the future. And it's also really thin and portable, which just makes it nice to use. I would say only go up to the MacBook Pro if you need the ports, if you want like the slightly nicer display, if you want the maximum power possible, or if time is money for you. But anyone else, just stay here and stick with the MacBook Air. But let's talk about the MacBook Pro and go into detail about some more of the changes that the MacBook Pro brings. So the MacBook Pro in a nutshell is pretty much the best and nicest laptop Apple sells right now. That means that it's like the MacBook Air, but slightly thicker, heavier, but also faster, has a nicer display, nicer speakers, slightly more battery life, and faster chip options. The thickness, I would say, is not that bad, at least on the 14-inch, because it's a bit thinner than the 16-inch, but still it's quite a bit heavier. I mean, the 14-inch MacBook Pro is heavier than the 15-inch MacBook Air, just to kind of put it into perspective. Still, I would say if you need the MacBook Pro, the trade-offs should be worth it. The design is also unchanged for a couple of years now, since 2021 in fact, and there's a rumor that next year in 2026 there will be a big refresh, but still I think it looks very modern and nice for now. The battery life is also slightly better than on the MacBook Air, but I think it shouldn't really be a deciding factor because it's roughly still like one full day. It's almost the same as a MacBook Air. The keyboard and trackpad are also really nice. They feel a little bit different. Some people prefer the MacBook Air, some people prefer the MacBook Pro. Personally, I think the MacBook Air is nicer, as I said, because it's thinner, but it's also kind of on the same level. So let's talk about what's really better on the MacBook Pro. And the most important factor here is the display. The MacBook Air, as I said, has an LCD panel, which is nice, but the MacBook Pro has a mini LED display, which is much nicer if you view a lot of blacks and like HDR stuff, because it can kind of totally turn off some parts of the display to make it look entirely black and not like this grayish black that you get on LCD displays. It also has a 120Hz display, which Apple calls ProMotion, which just means that your mouse movements and so on are a bit more fluid on this one. Personally, I think the 120Hz, while I think it's a really nice addition on the iPad and iPhone, it doesn't really make a big difference on the Mac, so I wouldn't really make it based on that. But some people really think it's important, so maybe just go to a store and check it out for yourself. The display is also a bit sharper, which I think is quite noticeable, but it depends on the person and how much you notice it, so you have to maybe check for yourself. And it's a lot brighter, which is really nice in sunlight. I think those are not really like game-changing difference, but I think you get the picture. Like the display is really, really great on the MacBook Pro, and it's really good on the MacBook Air, I would say. You can also get the MacBook Pro with a nano texture display, which when I saw it in the store looked really nice, but I haven't really tested it long term, so I can't really give you like a really good review on it. but it kind of reduces the glare, so it makes it nicer to view like in many different environments and looks pretty good from what I saw. It also comes with more ports. It has one more USB-C port on the right side, which is really nice for charging if you can't kind of reach the cable to the left side. And it also has an HDMI port and an SD card slot, which for me, it's really nice to have the SD card slot, and if you use them frequently, then it will be a really nice addition. But for most people, I think it's not really a relevant point. Of course, the biggest and most significant advantage for the MacBook Pro is that it has a lot more power, and it has like a lot more power if you want to pay up for it. It has not only the M4 chip that's also in the MacBook Air, but it also has an M4 Pro chip and also the M4 Max chip with up to 128 gigabytes of RAM, which is 4 times as much as in the MacBook Air. Of course, this will also make it very, very expensive, but it's great if you need the most performance on the go. And it comes in very handy if you wait for your Mac very often currently when developing software or working on creative tasks. The speakers are also a bit nicer on the MacBook Pro compared to the MacBook Air, but at least to me, it wouldn't really be a deciding factor. The MacBook Pro speakers are very, very impressive, and I think for the size, especially on the 14-inch, it's crazy how good they sound, but I don't really buy a laptop based on the speakers because I don't use them that often. In terms of configuration, this is a lot more complicated on the MacBook Pro, but let's get into it. In general, the same principles are still true. I would start by getting as much storage as you need, because there's nothing worse than having to get a new laptop in a year just because you constantly run out of storage. For most people, even when doing more intensive work, the M4 Pro will be the sweet spot. For example, I like the 1TB 24GB of RAM version. And if you want some extra future-proofing, I would upgrade it to 48GB of RAM, but it's not really necessary if you ask me. And for most people, even if you want a lot of power, I would recommend sticking with the M4 Pro instead of the M4 Max, because it adds a lot of cost and I'm not sure if it's worth it. I think it might be better to get the M4 Pro now and then maybe upgrade a bit sooner than to get the M4 Max now and try to wait longer to upgrade. That's because, for example, now the M4 Pro already matches the M3 Max in a lot of tasks and is definitely faster than the M2 Max. So for example, if you get the M4 Pro now and then maybe upgrade in 2 years to the M6 Pro, then upgrade 2 years later to the M8 Pro, I think that makes more sense than going from the M4 Max and then waiting for the M8 Max for 4 years instead of having that upgrade in between. And also the Max chips lose a lot of their value if you want to sell the laptop in 2 years. So compared to the Pro, I think it's just not a smart choice if you don't absolutely need the most amount of power right now. If you do though, the Max chips are great, and I think then you know who you are, and you're probably honestly not even watching this video because you've already ordered your MacBook Pro and you're not really between the Air and the Pro. In terms of the size choice, I would say it's kind of the same as with the MacBook Air. By default, I would recommend going with the smaller size, and only if you really want the bigger size, I would go for it, especially with the MacBook Pro, because the 16-inch MacBook Pro is really big and really heavy. I mean, it's also like the nicest screen you can have on the go, so if that's something that's important to you, then it might make sense, but for most people, I think the 14-inch will be a nicer experience. If you want to go for the 16-inch, I would definitely check it out in store before you buy it. And I would also make sure that it fits all of your backpacks, because that one doesn't really fit all of my backpacks when I tried it out. So in conclusion, here's what I would recommend if you're in the market for a new MacBook right now. The cheapest option would be the MacBook Air with the M2 or M3 chip if you can get it from Apple refurbished or from a retailer at a good deal. Just don't get it with 8GB of RAM, get 16 at least. The M4 MacBook Air is the best one that you can buy new from Apple right now, and the base model is good enough for most people if you can live with 256 gigabytes of storage. If you want to future-proof your purchase a bit more, I would recommend going for the 24 gigabytes of RAM and 512 gigabytes of storage option. That is a really nice sweet spot for the MacBook Air and will be very fast for a couple of years. If you want to go for the MacBook Pro, I would go for the M4 Pro chip, either with the 512 gigabytes or 1 terabyte of storage, depending on your needs. If you want max performance, then get the Max chip with as much RAM and storage as you need and can afford, but I would really only do that if you know that you absolutely need the maximum power and it will instantly save you money if your computer is faster. No matter which one you choose, just also make sure that you pick the size that fits your lifestyle and preferences best, and then I'm sure you'll be very happy with your new Mac. I really hope I could help you make a decision, and I'm sure you will be very happy with your new MacBook. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.